In a massive turn of events, it seems that there may be an actual ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And of course, that sent the markets absolutely ripping. That's following the swing failure pattern that we're looking at, with price dropping below $100,000, the reclaim, and then coming into the key areas, which we said would be about that $106,000. And then we need to see what the bulls are made of. And if they needed, if at least they wanted to continue this bull run, they needed to step things up very, very, very quickly. So in today's show, we'll have a look at the likelihood of that. Are the bulls pretty much out of the woods? Are the bears wrecked? And our price is going to be going higher? Smash the like button, hit the bell notification, and subscribe to the channel. Let's get straight into the show content over here. A massive, massive turn over there on the daily time frame, and bulls basically saving it in the final hour. But is all said and done yet, right? That's what we need to look at. Weeklies are still down massively across the board. A lot of the coins still down double digits on the weekly over there. And we spoke about yesterday how typically these war events, whether they actually continue as a war or there is some sort of a ceasefire that comes into play, typically result in prices generally moving towards the upside. When we look historically, it's the path of least resistance is a breakout towards new all-time highs, specifically around the stock market. And there's just another chart to give you that viewpoint. We look back specifically from the 1950s. So over the last 70-ish years, this goes back from 1935 over here, and pretty much every single war resulted in higher prices, right? So now that that's out the way, we'll have a look at what that means for crypto specifically. Yesterday, we were looking at this where we were targeting price into those moving averages, right? And that's exactly what we got. We've now got the move up into those moving averages. And the question is, can bulls sustain price action through there? One of the big concerning factors was we were looking for volume and momentum. And that was a bigger cause for concern than any of these war-driven events, because we know that wars typically still result in prices moving towards the upside, but there's a real lack of volume within the crypto market. So would this news be enough to turn the tides and bring at least new market participants back into crypto? I think that in order to get a sustained rally, that's exactly what we need. Right now, this is still a relief rally, a dead cat bounce, if you will, and we need to clear some higher prices. So we'll go over the levels. We'll look at what bulls need to do, but very, very quickly looking at some of Donald Trump's truth socials over here. Congratulations to everyone. It's been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final mission. These are some key terminologies in terms of the timing. He says for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war, right? So one of the shortest wars ever. But there has been, of course, a little bit of confusion around this, right? This coming out early on this morning. It was supposed to begin at 7 a.m. Israel time. The regime in Iran launched a barrage of non-stop missiles at Israeli civilians in the early hour morning. So far, I've heard apparently 4 people died in that. Ballistic missile alerts over Israel. Truth Social ceasefire lasted only 31 minutes and 47 seconds. So some confusion around which time zones they're working on over there. Northern Israel blanketed with missile alerts. And then Trump came out to reassert this morning the ceasefire is now in effect. This is after this, right? After the missiles were flung over in the morning, the ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And that's basically where we're at, right? So a lot of confusion within the market. I think we need to see, I guess we'll have much more clarity in the next 24 hours, but there's so much going on in the market. Jerome Powell's also going to be speaking. There's a lot of high impact economic events. And we were looking at oil yesterday, right? Coming into exact resistance over here. And I said, as long as price doesn't consolidate sideways for the next 2 weeks, that would create a bull flag and lead to a breakout, which would show that oil is rising. The war situation is continuing. And we said, show me the charts and I'll show you the news, is the saying. And we said, because you're coming into this trend line, you can see a little bit of resistance forming over here. And there's a good chance that you might pull back. And you got exactly that. Look at that pullback, massive pullback. As soon as they knew that the straits were not going to be closed and the oil routes were not going to be blocked, pretty much oil dropped back down. So, of course, if the straits get blocked, oil becomes more expensive and inflation comes back. And this is really one of Trump's biggest battles. So, is he pushing them to, of course, end or bring a ceasefire and stop the war because he wants oil to come down so that they can refinance the debt at a lower price. It is possible. It is possible. We'll quickly move that along over there and revisit that in a minute. But there is your US debt clock. Massive, massive, massive trillions of dollars worth of debt over there. And remember, they have these bond auctions where they refinance them. This is an ongoing thing depending on the duration of the debt. So they, sell off new debt. And basically the next big one for 30-year bond auction is coming on the 10th of July. So he probably wants Jerome Powell to cut the interest rates by the 30th of July. And he came out again tweeting straight after the oil prices dropped. And we'll go over this whole post over here because it is quite important. Too late, Jerome Powell of the Fed will be in Congress today in order to explain. It's like a president or at least a principal talking to his children. He must explain, right? He needs to explain, among other things, why he is refusing to lower the rate. Europe has had 10 cuts and we've had 0. No inflation, great economy. We should be at least 2 to 3 points lower. It would save the USA $800 billion per year plus. And he says what a difference this would make if things later change to the negative, increase the rate. I hope Congress really works this very dumb, hard-headed person over. So literally outright calling Jerome Powell dumb and hard-headed. He says we'll be paying for his incompetence for many years to come. The board should just activate Make America Great Again. So really, really, really probably pushing because of this bond auction that's coming up on the 10th of July. And he wants those interest rates to be cut. So the probabilities have shifted. There is now a 62.2% chance that they will actually reduce the interest rates. And I guess we'll find out what he says later. You got Vivek, who's a pretty reliable Twitter account over here or source. And he says Fed's Bowman just said that they are open actually to cutting interest rates as soon as July, which is just before that meeting, right? Just before the next big bond auction that's coming up on the 10th of July. So will they cut before then? Well, they could. And if they do, that would bring the next amount of liquidity, right? Money printer going off, and that could kick things into high gear to get things moving. So we have to look at the stock market. We spoke about this, and look at that. I told you, watch for the stock market, which could potentially squeeze to new all-time highs. And if that does, that would be one of the things that could drive crypto higher. Crypto is lacking volume and liquidity, but there is a hierarchy in terms of the way that you look at things. Although it's lacking volume and liquidity, generally speaking, if the stock market is going to break out into new all-time highs and go parabolic, then you'd expect that crypto is just going to follow suit. The liquidity will somehow have a spillover effect from the stock markets into crypto. And think of it like the rotational game on a macro scale, on a big scale, you'll start to see money flowing in. So that's what you're currently seeing now within, how far away is that? 0.5%, 0.5% away for the stock market before it's creating new all-time highs. We said even if it just grinds, even if it were to just chop about over here, that would be a good sign. And we said one of the things that we're looking at in terms of the stock market strength was if you focus on this candle over here, this is when the Israel-Iran basically conflict began, on that candle over there. And then we had the US intervene on this candle over here, this one over here, and it didn't breach the low. So that showed you a sign of strength. The fact that this candle did not breach that low was very, very, very significant. So I said, as long as you don't take out this low, expect that this is probably going to just be putting in higher lows, and the stock market is consequently going to probably squeeze into new all-time highs, which is right about where things are at now. So what does it mean for crypto, right? We actually have to look at crypto and see how things look over there. One of the things that we were looking at is the real bullish hopium case, Elliott wave 2 of the final 4 to 5 wave count, right? So the orange line denotes the final wave 5 count over here from the bottom all the way to the top. That is the macro picture to end the bull run, which could potentially take Bitcoin, conservative price target, I would say, would be about $125,000, $130,000. It all depends on when that time period gets hit. I'll show you why on the weekly chart in just a minute's time. But we were in a corrective phase. We had a couple of weeks of upside to create this substructure wave 1. So you go from there into wave 1. We said in the top, we pulled back. Basically, we were hunting for the low at the bottom of the wave 2. Is the low in yet? Unfortunately, you actually cannot confirm that yet. Is it probable that the low's in? Well, if we continue to close price action here or any higher over the course of today, then yes, you drastically increase the probability. But the reality is, the only way that we can actually confirm that this is the wave 2 bottom and it's in fact in, and we're ready to go balls to the walls through into that wave 3 count to complete the wave 5, well, you have to take at the top of wave 1 with a closing candle, which means you need to see basically new all-time highs. That's what you need to see. You basically need Bitcoin to close at new all-time highs. At that point, you can confirm 100% where the red arrow is, wave 2 is confirmed, and we're ready to go higher, right? And then usually that wave 2 to wave 3 of the final wave 5 structure is usually one of the biggest, boldest moves that you're going to see in crypto. And of course, all of this was dropped ahead of time. I covered this both on YouTube as well as in the Whale Room Discord. I gave everything over here. For those of you that are in there, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And basically, that's what we're waiting for, right? So you need a couple of things to line up. We said we really need to see new volume and liquidity come into the market. Could this be the answer? Could it be that before this bond auction, Powell, or at least Donald Trump, is going to force Jerome Powell somehow to cut those interest rates and to bring some new liquidity into the market? That's a possibility. If we do get that, if we get the money printer, if we get end of quantitative tightening in the form of rate cuts, then it could bring some relief with the stock market breaking into all-time highs. And that could snap back the cycle back into gear. That's what you're looking for, right? We're following the purple line over here. And you can see this is generally speaking as you approach the final, call it 2 to 3 months of the crypto cycle where things become aggressive. Now, I have to caution you on a couple of things from the bullish perspective. What I'd caution you on is the seasonality. You have to remember that generally speaking, July, which is only about 7 or 8 days away, July, August, September, that time period, that 3-month time period is typically where you expect seasonal lows to occur within the stock market. And because crypto follows the stock market so precisely, well, that is the one thing that you need to pay attention to in terms of being cautious. It's not the only thing. The other thing is, of course, the bearish divergences that are taking place over here with the MACD coming down, the RSI coming down, price putting in higher highs, but momentum oscillators putting in lower highs. That is, of course, a cause for concern. But again, we do have the party zone over here where the biggest moves take place. So again, if you can actually see this wave 2 confirmed and we move into a wave 3, that could take you from the wave 4 to wave 5 of the final structure, which again, I said that the conservative target would be a move up towards that $130,000 region, which is where you'd probably look to end that wave 5. Could it go higher? Of course, we need to analyze each of those microstructures along the way. But I would expect, depending on when it happens, this is gonna be massive resistance. The $130,000 zone is also your 1.618 fib extension, which is a very, very key area. That's at horizontal, which just so happens to line up with the diagonal prior resistance, and your RSI is going to run out of steam. Now, if you hit this level, I've covered this before, but I'm going to do it again because repetition does help people to understand what you're saying and get at ease, right? If you do put in this kind of a move and then price consolidates near those highs with the RSI doing the same thing, well, then maybe the RSI could actually break this. If the RSI did break that, cool. We can update those targets and we can start to look at the gigabull targets of Plan B, et al., all those guys. $400,000 Bitcoin is not even on the table right now, not even on the table. But if you can do something like that, great, we can entertain that. Right now, the best case scenario that I'm looking at in the short to medium term is 130,000. It is what it is, right? If you want a more bullish target, you need to go to a more bullish channel. I try to keep it as real as possible, right? As real as possible, giving you both the bull and the bear case. If you do appreciate that, by the way, smash the like button, smash the like button. So we spoke about the swing failure pattern. Now, this is where things were going to get a little bit interesting because the plan was sweep the lows, reclaim, and then run it up to exactly where we're at, $106,000, where we meet the yellow line, the line to rule them all, right? We said cautious underneath or even bearish underneath that line, bullish if you can hold above that line, and we're at that line. That is the inflection point. This is where we need to see what the bulls are made of, which is why I say we'll revisit this over the next 24 to 48 hours as some of this unfolds, right? Maybe, strikes continue and they don't respect this, and Donald Trump, who's shouting at his children over here, says, please do not violate it, and they violated. That's going to change things. That's going to dump the market, which we are approaching a resistance, right? We're at a major resistance over here right now, and we're still on low volume. Yes, you got a little bit of an uptick on that green bar, but generally speaking, relative to where price was for this move up, it's been declining, which again still remains the warning sign. But the good news is that you are getting a little bit of an uptick over there on the daily 7-day exchange volume. So this was the area we said between 30 and 35 billion. We want to see reaccumulation at that level, defend those lows, and then you can possibly start to mark things up. So this was the plan. Remember, sweep the lows. Now said, you really have to differentiate between, are we stuck in a ranging market or are we in a trending market? Remember that markets range, meaning they chop between a low and a high for about 70% of the time. And then they trend for about 30% of the time, which is much, much less. Now, if this is the start of a downtrend, well, you are putting in lower highs and lower lows, right? You've officially created a new lower low over here, which means you should be on lower high watch. Also, with that being said, you're coming into the mid-range. That was the sweep of the low. We're now approaching that mid-range level. So you need to look for any sort of resistance or swing failure patterns that could occur over here. Again, that's why the next 24 to 48 hours is very, very important. But USDT dominance is probably one of the most important charts to look at, which we'll revisit in a bit, right? When I get through the rest of these tabs over here. So we spoke about the possibility of a short squeeze with all the deltas being negative at the bottom of the range low and the sweep and the reclaim of that range low. That was good for a move to 100. And I wrote in the Discord, at least when I updated everyone, my target was 106,145 and it came to 106,135. So there it is. We can go to it. Where is my little update over there? This is ultimately what we're looking for, right? Over there. I said over there, we are looking for price to move. So sweep $100,000, reclaim $100,000, and then run it to $106,145, right? And you can see price got very, very, very close to there. So we had a pretty good call over there in the Discord. Price ran to 106,135, paused over there. So it's an important area, and that is based off of a little bit of a short squeeze that took place. You can see majority of those traders that got liquidated over the last 24 hours were shorts, 358 million, right? 358 million. There's been very high liquidations lately. So on both the long side and now flipping over onto the short side. So again, let's pay a little bit of attention to this in the coming days and weeks, right? Then the other thing that I mentioned, which was very, very, very important, is how your future is in this chart. Careers at McDonald's.com. Over there, if you get the USDT dominance into that level, party time if you get it into this level, which will consequently break the Bitcoin chart above here into all-time highs, and then you enter into the Bitcoin party zone. So it's been some critical zones over here. A couple of other things that we highlighted as well. Let's go back over here. I also posted this. This is yesterday, which is why you need to be in the Discord, right? If you want an active community to be engaged with and know what's happening from not just me, but the other traders. I said major hopium would be that you have an hourly rejective candle on the USDT dominance at 5.27%. I said it's still putting in high highs and high lows, but maybe you'll set your first H1, so hourly high, rejecting from this hourly fair value gap exactly into that zone over there, right? And if we just go fast forward to that, we got it. Exactly. Rejection straight from there. USDT dominance dumps. And now there's the possibility of this bear flag breaking down. So you need to see, and it's all in alignment with everything that I've covered with this. You need to see a rapid, aggressive breakdown in USDT dominance if you do want to confirm that as a wave 2 low and break into the wave 3, because as per the Elliott wave, that final wave 3 of wave 5 needs to happen pretty fast. It needs to be mega aggressive, and the only way that you're going to get an aggressive move is with a very, very, very quick inflow of USDT or of daily exchange volume. So new traders coming into the market, depositing money onto exchanges, buying up aggressively, and then that means people need to flock immediately out of USDT into the market. And so far, we're getting it right now. Beautiful rejective candle over there, but I want to remain cautious. At the moment, as long as we're below this, you can keep the bullish hopes alive. As long as you're below this SR flip region, keep the bullish hopes alive. If you start to take out these lows, this is pretty much going to be the next level. If you see USDT dominance break below 4.5%, the floodgates open, right? That will open the floodgates. I'm telling you now, you will see prices move very quickly or towards the upside as this drops very quickly towards the downside. So a lot of good things to be looking at over there, but it's still very, very early days, right? You had the big move up, you came down, you rejected over there. We'll keep an eye out on the hourly candle. I expect that there will be a lot of chop and volatility, especially since Jerome Powell is going to be speaking later on today. We'll see if he shows Donald Trump the finger. Because Donald Trump called him, what did he call him over here? Let's just quickly see. He called him a dumb, hard-headed person. We'll see if Jerome Powell takes a liking to that, or if he's going to come back with some sort of a rate hike. Imagine. Very, 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 very interesting stuff over here in the markets. Okay, so if you do want to take advantage of the next major move and the volatility, guys, do remember that you do have the PWTT $5 million up for grabs competition over there on Phoenix. You do get a sign-up bonus if you use the link in the description below over here. That does qualify you specifically to a sign-up bonus. Go over there, take a couple of trades. You never know, maybe you can win something, right? Maybe you can win something. So continuing on, short squeeze levels, let's quickly have a look at the liquidity heat map. Part of the bias was that liquidity was stacked around that 103, 104,000. So we were looking for a move into there. You got a bit more liquidity building up at now 106,000 on the 24-hour period. Let's look at the 48-hour period. Also a little bit over there at 106,000 Bitcoin price. So you could squeeze a bit more. Most of it's been wiped on both the bottom and the downside over the last 3 days. And let's double check the weekly. Weekly starting to slowly build up a little bit over here at 106,000 as well. So flipping long on the deltas. You can see over here flipping long on the deltas. This has dropped in the Whale Room Discord. ETH is still slightly negative. It hasn't crossed that zero line to turn positive yet. And then you can see there's some orders that are stacked over here at the VWAP on the 30-minute time frame. 244 Bitcoin up for grabs at 103,000. So if there are dips, it looks like they want to snap those up. And then on the high side, you also have some sell orders, 377 million worth of Bitcoin coming towards the top of the range high. So we'll keep an eye on this order book over here to see if they pull those orders or not. Remember, they can initiate spoofing and pull those orders. So we need to be careful of that. Okay, cool. We had multiple candles below, 3 candles open and close below the 50 EMA, which of course price is now knocked straight back into. And again, this is why the next 24 to 48 hours are going to be pretty important, because if you can continue to hold above these, then great. Essentially, you've completed the majority of that shakeout and price can possibly resume. In terms of if you're in the market now or not, let's assume you're not in the market. If you're not in the market, personally, there's no way I'd possibly buy over here. If you're not in the market, you're better off waiting for confirmed strength, some sort of a consolidation or pullback near those highs, at which point you've reclaimed a level. If you are in the market, I would monitor the lower time frame charts over here and possibly even consider taking 50% profit. If you did take that trade with us, we actually did it yesterday on Whale School Live. Here it was. I'll show you exactly. We literally took it exact at the peak or bottom. We had 2 more orders that were set a little bit lower. We had 99 and 98,679. But the main order was exactly into that golden pocket, which is between the 618 and 65 fib level. So perfectly. Not only that, but you also had your 50% of the wick, which is an inefficiency trade, targeting 50% of this wick, which lined up perfectly with that. So we had another wonderful trade over there yesterday. So if you did take that trade, what would I do, right? I just monitor these low time frames. As you can see on the hourly, it's attempting to confirm a little bit of a high low over here. I'd basically just move my stop loss underneath this candle. There we go. That's it. Just put your stop loss underneath that candle. You basically want to maintain that trend and continue price towards the upside. So that's the way that I'd be playing it. Either you got to wait for a reclaim of the highs before going long, or if you're already long, stop loss below these candles, trail it, because there's a good chance, that there can still be a rejection at these key zones, at this cluster of moving averages over here. Okay, what does it mean for the total cryptocurrency market cap? This is looking at it on the daily time frame. Let's just quickly measure out with the fib levels over here. So since we do now have a possible low in the making, well, you capped exactly at that 50% level, which is a form of resistance. So typically you don't want to buy resistance unless it can flip it into support. So you're watching this area over here, 3.23 trillion, right? 3.23 trillion. If you can get above that 3.23 trillion, which I'll put in yellow, again, that will be a sign of strength. And then you can consider that a swing failure pattern and a reclaim. The good news is for certain coins like Bitcoin, well, you did actually defend this. You did defend this over here. High lows, there you go. You held it. But remember, on other things like the total 3 chart, well, you actually swept below that, right? I think this one's not as bad. Total 2 was worse, right? There it is. Total 2. So total 3 held up. Total 2 broke down new lows. new lows over there. It broke structure. You really wanted to defend this level. So go back to yesterday's show if you want more information, because I went through a bunch of altcoins and I basically showcased what you're looking for in terms of that structure. You typically don't want to long the things that are weak like this, but instead the things that manage to hold up above those lows, right? So like Bitcoin managed to defend that low. It didn't actually break down on the daily time frame. So here it is, this area. You wanted to hold that area. You did hold that area. Now, if you do reject over here, again, the targets are the same. $95,000 is a major support. That's the cluster with the 200 MA and EMA, which is coming in as support. That's if you do reject. If you reject and you put in a lower high, because this is still lower high territory that you're forming over here, $95,000 is the next big level. If you lose $95,000, there's big trouble, right? Then we have to bring in much lower targets. And then you have there's always the possibility that this is basically rolling over and the bearish divergence is taking effect. So it's all about probabilities, guys. Remember, this is not a one-sided show. I don't come and just say up only or down only. I'm giving you both sides and then presenting the case, giving you the probabilities essentially, and it's up for you to decide. We look to take the trades in both directions. Longs when it's high probability near the lows, and shorts when it's high probability for a short trade near the highs, right? That's what you're trying to do in trading. Bitcoin dominance could still easily make it to this trend line over here, 66.39%. There's no confirmation of a breakdown over here. This is absolutely bulldozing and very, very, very strong. So we need to see a lot more for this to be confirmed as breaking down, and then high prices on the altcoin. So remain at least cautious when it comes to putting too much capital into the altcoin sector. All right, what else? What else have we got? Let me know in the comments. Okay, let me know in the comments over there. Also, go vote. Go vote over here. If you haven't voted, cast your vote, right? You have the right to vote. Given the ceasefire, which most resonates with you specifically, we back giga bullish. That's 31% of you. Absolute to the moon giga bullish. You probably long to the hilts. It's a great start, but you're very cautious, 44%. I'm probably in this camp, to be honest with you. 44%, because certain things I want to see, like the volume, that's really important to me. I want to see the volume come in. I would prefer to see the stock market actually clear into new highs, which I think will happen. But once that happens, it's just the probabilities shift aggressively, right? And then huge bull trap, we're going low. 23% of you say that, and then others in the comment section. The 2% of you, I don't know what you guys are saying. You need to let me know in the comment section. There's a lot of comments over here, so you need to let me know after the show. Then I can go and read those comments, because this is the live feed comment section. Okay, so yeah, what else? Quickly checking your messages over here. As Long the Revolution says, shit's brutal. It is. Absolutely, it is brutal. This is a what do you call it? This is like essentially a product of the end phase of the market cycle. It is. This is what happens, right? The end phase of the market cycle. Remember, this is the easy mode. This is very, very, very easy mode. That's why I just go all in, 100% long, no problems, no sweat, no sleepless nights. But as you start to approach this phase, and we haven't even got into that, what happens when you start to get into this final leg over here? You look at the greens and the orange, right? Look at these huge moves up, massive moves down. Doesn't look like much over here, but these are drops of like 40, 50% in a day. It's unreal. And that's a product of the end phase of the market cycle. All you need to do is divide this up into quarters and ask yourself, are you in the first quarter? I mean, pretty obvious, no. Are you in the second quarter? No. Are you in the third quarter? No. Are you in the fourth quarter, right? The fourth quarter, the final innings. You're in the fourth quarter, it's almost over, at least in terms of the timing cycles and if it's going to play out like it previously has. Now, also what I will say finally, with that being said, it is oftentimes right in the final tip, the last little bit over there, that you do get that breakdown in Bitcoin dominance and altcoins outperform for a short period of time. Now, I don't want to even use that word because it's a bit of a swear word, but there are things going on. I've been looking at this. This is from Swiss Block. It says, we're in the bottom phase. The last time this signal triggered, which is for essentially what's happening in the altcoin sector, the last time it fired was the 7th of April. It took 3 days to essentially play out. And what happened? Bitcoin rallied by 30% over 3 weeks. Altcoin surged between 50 and 120%. So it happens quick, right? Just over a couple of weeks. And essentially, what is it telling us now? This is what they say. Just 8% over there of altcoins show negative impulse. Historically, bottoms form when this hits 15 to 25%. So basically, if this keeps moving up at this rate, that's where the bottoms form. And once the signal resets to 0, you expect ETH and alt to take the lead and outperform Bitcoin. So essentially, you're waiting for this to get to that 15 to 25%, recontract back to the bottom, and then you get the altcoin impulse towards the upside. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe a few more weeks. Maybe a couple more weeks. We need to keep an eye out on this. I will update you. Of course, I'll update you. If you want a more tailored approach, remember, guys, jump into Whale Room, right? This is where we drop all these things, all these analysis thoughts. It's not only me. There are other traders over there absolutely crushing it. So the link is in the description below for that. And then you guys know it as well. Phoenix, $5 million up for grabs. Great exchange, tier 1 exchange. You know, a book, which means they don't trade against you. They are using external market makers, which is very important if you're serious about your trading. All right, that's it from me. I'll see all of you on the next one. I hope you have a lovely day, and cheers for now.